The moment my son-in-law leaned back in his chair at my daughter's dinner table and said, "Walter, no offense, but men your age don't really understand how business works anymore." I smiled, refilled my glass of water, and made a decision I wouldn't act on for another 6 weeks. That's the part they never account for. The quiet, the stillness of a man who has already decided but hasn't moved yet. My name is Walter Briggs. I'm 61 years old. I spent 34 years building a regional logistics company, from a single cargo van and a Rolodex into an operation with 22 trucks, 31 full-time employees, and contracts with 3 mid-size manufacturers in the Ohio River Valley. I am not a complicated man. I show up. I keep my word. I fix things when they're broken, and I don't complain about the fixing. I want you to understand who I was before that dinner table comment, because it matters for everything that comes after. My daughter, Vanessa, is 34. She married Colin Marsh 3 years ago. Colin is 38, works in commercial real estate, drives a leased BMW, and has the absolute certainty of a man who has never been seriously wrong about anything. He isn't cruel in the way that leaves marks. He's cruel in the way that makes you wonder afterward if you imagined it. A tone here, a dismissal there, a look he shares with Vanessa when he thinks I'm not watching. Vanessa is brilliant. I want to be clear about that because I love her and because it's true. She graduated top of her class at Ohio State, built a career in healthcare administration, and has a mind that could run any room she walks into. What she has always struggled with is the space between loving someone and seeing them clearly. I tried for 3 years to give Colin the benefit of the doubt. Tried to chalk the comments up to nerves, to generational difference, to the particular awkwardness of a son-in-law still figuring out how to be around his wife's father. I made excuses. I am good at making excuses for people I want to like. It didn't start as one big thing. It never does. First Thanksgiving after the wedding. Colin mentioned, casually, over sweet potato casserole, that he'd been looking at more efficient ways I could run my business. I hadn't asked. He had worked in real estate for 4 years. He said the logistics industry was ripe for disruption and that I should consider selling before the market shifted. I said thank you, passed the rolls, and let it go. Christmas that year, I brought a bottle of Knob Creek I'd been saving, good bourbon, the kind you don't open for ordinary Tuesdays. Colin took one look at it, said, "We're more of a Scotch household now," and put it in a cabinet without opening it. Vanessa was in the kitchen. She didn't hear it. I poured myself a glass of the Scotch they offered and tasted nothing. The following spring, I helped them move into their new house. I took 2 days off work, drove 3 hours with my truck, hauled furniture, assembled a bed frame, fixed a door that wouldn't close right. When we were done, Colin stood in the living room, looked around and said to Vanessa, "We should have just hired movers." Not to me. To her, like I was the walls. She laughed it off. She always laughed it off. But the dinner. The dinner was where something shifted. It was a Saturday in September. They'd invited a few of Colin's colleagues over, a couple from his office, and another pair they knew from a neighborhood association. Nice people, I thought at first. The wine was good. The food was good. I was enjoying myself in the cautious, calibrated way I'd learned to enjoy myself in their house. The conversation turned to business. One of Colin's colleagues, a guy named Brent, asked what I did. I told him. He seemed genuinely interested, asked about the contracts, the fleet size, the operational challenges of regional freight in a post-pandemic market. I was in the middle of answering when Colin said it. "Walter, no offense, but men your age don't really understand how business works anymore." Brent went quiet. His wife looked at her plate. Vanessa was at the other end of the table, laughing at something, and she either didn't hear or chose not to. I smiled. "You might be right," I said. I refilled my water glass, and in my head, very quietly, I started planning. Here is what nobody knew at that table, or at any table where Colin had made me invisible. I had been quietly, methodically planning to retire and sell the company for the better part of 18 months. Not because the business was failing, because it was thriving, and I had built it well enough that it didn't need me anymore, which is the only real measure of a thing you've built. I had a buyer, a regional freight consolidator out of Columbus who had been circling my operation for 2 years. The offer was substantial, more than substantial, the kind of number that changes what the rest of your life looks like. I had not told Vanessa, I had not told Colin. I had been waiting for the right moment, whatever that meant, to share the news with my daughter and let her be happy about it. I had imagined that conversation 100 times. Dinner, somewhere nice. Her face when I told her. The uncomplicated joy of a father who can tell his child that the thing he built worked out. That dinner in September is when I stopped imagining that conversation. I drove home that night, 3 hours back to Dayton, and I thought about what I was doing and why. I had been accommodating a man who did not respect me. Inside my own daughter's house, at a table where I was a guest, for 3 years. I had laughed off the comments and let the dismissals go and told myself it was about Vanessa, about keeping peace, about being the kind of father who didn't make things harder. What I had actually been doing was teaching Colin exactly what I was worth to him. I called my attorney the following Monday. Not because I was angry, because I was clear. My attorney, a woman named Patricia Odom, who had handled my business affairs for 11 years, listened to the whole thing. The offer from Columbus, my timeline, what I wanted to do with the proceeds. When I finished, she said, "Walter, you could have called me 18 months ago." I wanted to be sure, I said. "Are you sure now?" "Yes." "Then, let's get you out clean." Here is the thing about a business sale at the level I was operating. It is not a fast process. It is deliberate and documented and requires more patience than most people can hold. Patricia guided me through it the way a good navigator guides a ship. We structured the deal to close over 8 weeks. I kept working. I kept showing up. I told my employees 3 weeks before close, because they deserved to know first, and because 2 of them, a dispatcher named Darnell and my operations manager Sandra, had been with me for over a decade, and I owed them more than a press release. I told no one else. October passed. November came. Vanessa called most Sundays. I asked about her week. She asked about mine. We talked about her work and her friends and the neighborhood association project Colin was involved with. She sounded happy. I was glad she sounded happy. I just didn't know yet if the happiness was real or if it was the particular kind of happy that comes from not looking too closely at things. The closing date was December 4th, a Thursday. I sat in Patricia's office in downtown Dayton and signed my name 41 times. The wire transfer confirmed at 2:14 in the afternoon. Patricia poured 2 glasses of water, handed me one, and said, "Congratulations, you're done." I sat there for a moment. 34 years, a single cargo van, a Rolodex, done. I drove home, ordered a pizza, and watched a game I didn't care about until I fell asleep on the couch. I don't know what I expected to feel. I felt quiet, the good kind. The kind you've been waiting for without knowing you were waiting. I called Vanessa the following Sunday. "Hey Dad, how's everything?" "Good," I said. "I actually have some news. The company sold. Closed Thursday." Silence. "Wait, what?" "The freight company. I found a buyer, worked it out over the last few months. It closed Thursday, Dad." Her voice was careful in a way I recognized. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I'm telling you now. I mean before. Why didn't we know this was happening?" "Because it was my company, Vanessa, my decision." A longer pause. I could hear Colin's voice somewhere in the background, low, asking something. Then she said, "Can we come see you this weekend? I think we should talk about this in person." "Of course," I said. "Come Saturday. I'll make dinner." They arrived at noon. Colin walked in with the energy of a man who had been briefed and had thoughts. He shook my hand, looked around the house with the particular assessment of someone calculating things, and said, "So, big news. Come in," I said. "Sit down." We sat at the kitchen table. I had made coffee. I poured cups. I did not skip anyone. Vanessa started. She said she was happy for me. She was, but she was also a little hurt that I hadn't told them sooner. That something this big, this was the business she'd grown up watching me build, and she felt a little left out. I understood that. I told her so. I meant it. Then Colin said, "What are we talking about, number-wise? Because there are some real opportunities right now, and I'd hate to see capital sitting idle when it could be working." "Not what are your plans? Not are you okay? What are we talking about, number-wise?" I looked at him for a moment. "Colin," I said, "I appreciate the thought. I have a financial advisor I've been working with for about 9 years. Patricia connected me with an estate planning attorney in November. Everything is structured." Sure, he said, nodding with the patience of a man who thinks he's about to be patient. "But I mean, Real estate specifically. There's a window right now in certain markets. I've been watching some opportunities in the Columbus corridor that could make serious sense for your situation. My situation. I'm good, I said. Thank you. He looked at Vanessa. The look, the one that said, "Can you talk to him? Because he's not hearing me." Vanessa looked at the table. "Dad," she said carefully. "Colin just wants to help. He knows this space really well." "I know he does," I said. "And I'm telling you both that I have a plan and the plan is taken care of." Colin said, "It's just a lot of money to have sitting in conservative accounts when." "Colin," I said his name once. Just his name. The same way you say it to close a door. "I'm not going to talk about the number with you. That's not a conversation I'm having." He sat back. Vanessa said, "Dad, that's not fair to..." "Vanessa." I looked at her directly. "I love you. I'm glad you're here. But I built that company over 34 years and I sold it on my terms, and what I do with the money is my decision." I said, "No, that's the end of it." Something shifted in the room. Colin recovered fast. He changed the subject to something about the neighborhood association, and Vanessa followed his lead, and the rest of the afternoon moved the way strained afternoons do, everyone on the surface of a thing, nobody going under. They left around 5. Vanessa hugged me at the door and held on a second longer than usual. "I love you, Dad." "Love you too, kid." I watched them pull out of the driveway. Colin didn't look back. What came next surprised me. Not in the way a bomb surprises you, in the way rain surprises you when you already knew the weather was coming. Vanessa called on Tuesday. She started carefully. Said she'd been thinking. Said Colin meant well. Truly, he just wanted to be involved, to feel like he was part of the family in that way, you know? And she felt like sometimes I kept her at arm's length, that I'd made this enormous decision without including her, and it stung. Even if she understood it was my right. And she was wondering if maybe I was doing it on purpose. If I was, she needed to know that, because she couldn't keep feeling like I didn't trust her husband. I let her finish. "Vanessa," I said, "I've spent 3 years watching Colin dismiss me at your dinner table, in front of your friends, in front of your house guests. I drove 3 hours to help you move, and he told you should have hired movers while I was standing right there. I brought good bourbon to Christmas and he put it in a cabinet without opening it. I've never said a word about any of it. I've shown up every time you've asked me to show up. Quiet. I didn't tell you about the sale because by the time I made the decision, I'd already learned that some things in my life are mine to keep. Not because I don't trust you, because I realized I needed to protect something. Dad, I'm not angry, Vanessa. I want you to know that. This isn't anger. I'm just telling you what I see, because you asked." She didn't have much to say after that. There is a particular kind of silence that is not empty. It is full of things two people are hearing for the first time about each other. We stayed in it for a moment. "I didn't know he did those things," she said finally. Her voice was smaller. "I didn't tell you," I said. "I was trying to make it easier." "Was it?" "No." She called again Thursday. "Not Colin, just her. Can I come see you this weekend? Just me?" "Yes," I said. "Come Sunday. I'll make that soup you like." She came. She sat at the same kitchen table. She didn't bring anything to say, just herself, which was the right choice. We ate soup. We talked about her work. We talked about my retirement plans, which include a trip to Iceland I had been putting off for 20 years, and a volunteer project with a regional food bank where a former employee of mine sits on the board. At some point she said, "I think I've been asking you to be smaller than you are so it didn't feel like a competition." I thought about that. "He's intimidated by you," she said. I knew it, and I just kept trying to smooth it over instead of talking to him about it. "That wasn't right." "No," I said. "It wasn't." "I'm sorry, Dad." I looked at her, this woman I had driven to soccer practice and helped move into her first apartment and watched walk down an aisle toward a man I was still figuring out how to read. "You don't owe me an apology for his behavior. I owe you one for mine." We sat with that for a while. This is the part I want to be clear about, because I think it's the part that gets lost in stories like this. I didn't want Colin to fail. I didn't want Vanessa's marriage to fall apart. I wasn't building toward a dramatic exit or a moment where someone looked at me from across a room and finally understood what they'd lost. I wanted to stop disappearing in my own life. That's the thing about small dismissals over time. They don't feel like damage while they're happening. They feel like patience. They feel like being the bigger person. They feel like sacrifice made out of love. And then one day, you're sitting at a dinner table listening to a man explain that you don't understand business anymore, and you smile and refill your water glass, and you realize that you have been erasing yourself one small accommodation at a time for 3 years. And you stop, not loudly, not dramatically. You just stop. The January following the sale, I closed on a condo in downtown Dayton. Clean lines, high ceilings, good light in the morning. I had always lived in the house I'd raised Vanessa in, on the east side of town, the house her mother and I bought when Vanessa was 2. After her mother passed, 8 years ago, I stayed there out of habit and maybe out of loyalty to what the house meant. The condo was entirely mine. No history, no obligation. Just the future. My financial advisor, a man named George Tillman who had managed my portfolio for 9 years and never once tried to put me in anything I didn't understand, had helped me structure things in the months leading up to the sale. The proceeds were working. Not the way Colin meant working the way money works, when someone patient and methodical is making decisions with it. I booked the Iceland trip for April. I also called an old colleague of mine, a man named Ray Sutter who ran a mid-sized shipping operation in Kentucky, and had mentioned once, years ago, that if I ever had capital to put into something worthwhile, he'd have something to show me. I had a conversation with Ray that lasted 2 hours. At the end of it, I asked Patricia to look at the structure and let me know what she thought. She thought it was sound. I didn't tell Vanessa any of this, not to keep secrets, because it was mine. She found out some of it in February through a mutual friend who knew Ray, and she called me on a Sunday morning with a strange energy in her voice. "Dad, are you investing in Ray Sutter's expansion?" "I'm considering it. Colin has been trying to connect with Ray for 2 years. He didn't know you knew him." I said nothing. Dad, he's pretty upset. "I imagine," I said. "He feels like you went around him on purpose." I thought about that. About the cargo van. About 41 signatures in Patricia's office. About good bourbon put in a cabinet without being opened. About men your age. "I didn't go around him," I said. "I went my own way. Those aren't the same thing." Vanessa was quiet. "Colin is going to want to talk to you," she said. "He can call me," I said. "I'll answer." He didn't call. What he did instead was text me a week later. A long text, the kind that takes real effort to write and almost always says less than it intends to. He said he wanted to clear the air, that he thought there had been some misunderstandings, that he respected what I'd built, and didn't mean for any of his comments over the years to come across wrong. That he would really value a chance to have a different kind of conversation. I read it twice. Then I put my phone face down on the kitchen counter and poured my morning coffee and thought about what I actually wanted to say. I didn't text back that day. Or the day after. On the third day, I picked up my phone and typed 6 sentences. I told him I appreciated the text. I told him I had no interest in a grudge or in making his marriage harder, because I love Vanessa and that matters more than any of this. I told him that I had heard everything he'd said over the past 3 years, that none of it landed the way he probably hoped it did, and that I was not available anymore for conversations that start from the assumption that I need his guidance. I told him I was genuinely happy to have a real relationship with him if that was something he wanted. Then I sent it. He replied 40 minutes later, one line, "Understood. I'd like that." I don't know what that means yet. Neither does he, probably. But it's a start of something honest, which is the only thing either of us can actually build on. The Iceland trip was everything the photographs don't prepare you for. I went alone on purpose for 10 days in April. I hiked the Fimmvörðuháls trail between 2 glaciers. I watched the northern lights from a ridge above a valley, so quiet I could hear my own blood. I ate lamb and drank good coffee and called no one until day 4, when I called Vanessa to tell her about the lights, and she got quiet in a way that meant she was happy for me. "You sound good, Dad." "I am good, Vanessa. Genuinely." "I'm glad," she said. And then, "Colin asked if we could come visit when you're back. He wants to take you to dinner." I looked out the window at a landscape so old it makes everything else feel like a draft. "Tell him yes," I said. "I'll be home the 15th. Here's what I think about now. On the mornings when I'm having coffee, and there's enough quiet to actually think. 3 years of small erasures. 3 years of comments I absorbed and excuses I made, dinner tables where I chose to be invisible because I thought I was doing it for love. I wasn't doing it for love. I was doing it to avoid the cost of being seen. There is a cost to being seen when the person looking at you has decided not to value what they find. And for a long time I thought the solution was to give that person less to look at. Make myself smaller. Make my presence easier. Stop offering things that were going to be dismissed anyway. The solution was never smallness. The solution was deciding that my life was mine. I didn't need anyone to apologize. I didn't need Colin to understand the value of what I'd built or acknowledge the size of what I'd accomplished. I didn't need my daughter to choose between her husband and her father, because that was never what this was about. I needed to stop negotiating for space that was already mine to take. One cargo van. 34 years. A closing document I signed 41 times in a conference room on a Thursday afternoon. I built something. It worked. And then I walked out of that room in downtown Dayton into a December afternoon that was cold and bright and entirely unscheduled. And I stood on the sidewalk for a moment with nothing left to prove to anyone, including myself. That's the part they don't show in the movies. The man standing on the sidewalk in December, no music, no crowd, just the particular freedom of someone who stopped waiting to be believed in and started believing in himself. It doesn't look like victory from the outside. It doesn't look like much at all. That's exactly what it is.